I always thought I'd have it all. A big house, a dependable husband, loving kids, and a kind-hearted mother-in-law. I'm Lilu, a stay-at-home mom. I married Eden, my college sweetheart. We knew going in that we'd be living with his parents. But then my mother-in-law passed away with death, and my mother-in-law's health deteriorated. We had to sell their property to settle those debts. Eden has a sister, but we kept 80% of the money from the sale to take care of my mother-in-law. So we built a 5-bedroom house for us, our 2 kids, and my mother-in-law. I'm sorry you've had to go through all this trouble for me. Taking care of my bedridden mother-in-law was challenging, but her gratitude made it bearable. Thanks for always being there. Why don't you take some time off today? I'll take over. Eden also pitches in with housework and childcare, which gives me some time to myself. Then one day, my divorced sister-in-law moved in. She had been living with a guy who had a gambling problem. He'd borrow money from people and let them take advantage of her. This left her with PTSD and a fear of men. She's getting treatment now. She's a single mom with 2 kids, and we can't just turn our backs on her. I feel so sorry for her. She should stay with us for a while. Thank you, Lilu. We agreed she could stay for a year to heal and become independent. But 2 years have passed. My once humble sister-in-law has grown rather arrogant. We initially didn't ask her for money, but Eden finally told her to contribute $300 a month, which she does. Even so, $300 for her and her 2 kids is hardly enough. And she started to act like she owns the place. For example, we have a rule about doing our own laundry, but she puts hers in our basket. I decided it was time to set things straight. Please follow the rules. Your contribution isn't enough, and you've overstayed your welcome. Can you please move out? Well, this is basically my family home. Maybe it's because she inherited 80% of the sale of her parents' property and her mother lives here, but she acts like this is her home. Nowadays, I'm not just stuck with housework, but also picking up sister-in-law's kids from daycare. On top of that, sister-in-law's son treats my daughter like she's an inconvenience. I can't even spend quality time with my own child because of this situation. The amount of housework has increased, and I even have to provide care for the elderly. The comment that surprised me the most was, "You're amazing for even handling their bathroom needs. I couldn't do it." I'm honestly at my limit. I'm overwhelmed with all these responsibilities. I might reach my breaking point. It's too much to ignore. It's been over a year since our deadline passed. Our finances are strained, too. I've repeatedly told her to leave, but it hasn't had any impact. I'll have a talk with her as well. Thank you. From the next day on, I ignore sister-in-law family's laundry. Feeling a bit guilty, I also start making smaller portions for meals and even add less care into it. What the heck? Why is there so little food? We're barely getting rent from you, so I'm cutting back. Sister-in-law complained to Eden. Eden, don't you think this is horrible? Not at all. Shouldn't you just be grateful that food is being made for you? Over time, things revert back to the way they were. Lilu, can you do this for me? Sis, become independent. Do it yourself. Don't rely on Lilu. If you won't do your part, leave. I do contribute to the household expenses, so what's the big deal? No way that covers it. If you want to stay, you need to ask my wife to extend your stay and contribute a reasonable amount. Sister-in-law left for her part-time job without saying a word. I'm sorry, Lilu. Can we talk a little now? How about the 3 of us, including Mom, have a conversation? So the 3 of us gathered in mother-in-law's room, and I started speaking. It was something I had been mentally preparing for. Lately, I've been feeling so stressed that I can't properly interact with my daughter. I even find myself yelling at her out of frustration. I'm also concerned about how my daughter is being treated like a burden by sister-in-law. I don't feel comfortable in my own home anymore, and it seems like that will continue. If sister-in-law and her family don't move out within 2 months, I'm considering renting an apartment for me and my daughter for our own well-being. I might even contemplate divorce. I'm really sorry for letting things get to this point. All of the burden has been falling on Lilu, and I knew she was getting stressed out. I'm not happy with the current situation either, but I didn't know how to ask my sister to move out. I knew that Eden wasn't taking this lightly either. I've been talking to my friends about what to do, and I thought maybe I should just toss out all of my sister's stuff and change the locks. But then I was warned that could lead to legal issues, so I was confused about what to do. I see. Considering the past and our divorce, I initially thought living together wouldn't be too bad. But now it seems like the only option is to ask her to move out. Yeah, it's becoming a toxic environment for the family. But how do we deal with my stubborn sister, who refuses to leave? At that moment, my mother-in-law, who had been silent, spoke up. Lilu, I'm sorry for causing you trouble when you're even taking care of me. Could you ask my daughter to come to my room when she gets home today? Of course. I'm not sure what she's going to say, but she probably wants her to move out. It feels like something's starting to change because I've shown strong resolve. We'll see what happens, but I need to stay strong and not let my emotions get the best of me. The first step is to change my attitude and actions. After asking my sister-in-law to go to my mother-in-law's room when she got home from her part-time job, I told her I wouldn't be cooking dinner anymore, starting tomorrow. She glanced at me and headed to my mother-in-law's room. A little while later, I could hear her raising her voice inside the room. Eden and I were contemplating entering the room when she came out quietly, but walked back to her room with a heavy step. Mom, are you okay? I'm fine. Sorry for making you worry, but I don't think my words resonated with her. I don't think that's true. I'm sure she's got something to think about. Let's take this opportunity to cooperate as a trio. From that day on, we increased our talks as a trio and became more assertive in our words and attitudes. We frequently told her that we wanted her to move out, didn't take on any imposed housework or babysitting, and during our discussions, we decided on specific conditions for her departure. Then a meeting was held, including her. She sat there, knowing what was to be discussed, with an impatient look. Eden began speaking. Sis, we've told you repeatedly that we've reached our limit. Our finances are strained. Please leave within a month. A month? That's impossible. How long do you think we've waited? Fine, I'll increase the living expenses to $500. That should be enough, right? She looked like she couldn't care less. No, it's not nearly enough. Like I've said before, if you want to stay here, first agree to our terms, and then apologize to Lilu for causing her trouble. This isn't your home. It's the home of me, Lilu, and our children. Let's make that clear, so there's no misunderstanding. What? Isn't that too harsh? You think you're having it tough? We've been covering your daycare costs for Lilu for a whole year, and you still want to milk us for more? Fine, let me ask you this. If $500 isn't enough, how much would make you happy? Sister-in-law still won't back down. How can she say this stuff with a straight face? To be frank, even if you were to start helping around the house, $500 is nowhere near enough if you're going to continue freeloading. We'd need at least $1,000. You're scamming us. I nearly blurted out. That's rich coming from you. If you don't move out within a month, we'll consider legal action. We don't care where you go, but you've been warned. You need to be out in a month. Finally, it seemed Eden's words hit home. Sister-in-law was silent for a moment and then caved in. Fine, I get it. Are you sure? I'll start looking for a place tomorrow. If you don't move out, we'll put your stuff outside and change the locks. Sister-in-law nodded and hurried out of the room. After that, Eden took a hard line. If he came home and found sister-in-law there, he'd throw her and her stuff out, only for her to sneak back in. We started charging her for using our amenities, like the toilet, shower, kitchen, water, and TV. If her kid ever wronged our daughter, we'd lock her kid out on the balcony. Even my normally calm mother-in-law was yelling at her to leave. Eventually, sister-in-law stopped asking me for favors and quickly found a place to move, perhaps due to the hostile environment. Considering what her ex-husband did to her, it's hard not to sympathize. But isn't standing on her own 2 feet the best thing for her? I was relieved. Then she finally moved out just before the deadline. But that relief was short-lived. A week after she left, an unexpected turn of events took place. Sister-in-law collapsed due to mental health issues. Being alone with her child seemed to have triggered past traumas. Doctors said it's risky for her to live alone with her child. Though sister-in-law acknowledged that her eviction was a result of her own actions, she still wished for a life of dependency, like before her marriage. Is it cold of me to think that her character, one of dependence on others, was the root cause of her collapse? Since sister-in-law's collapse, Eden and mother-in-law have had several discussions. Seeing them like this makes me anxious. Am I being left out of the loop, despite being the one burdened the most? Depending on how things go, I might need to think about my next moves. If we end up taking sister-in-law back, should we consider a trial cohabitation, or even think about divorce? While I've been thrown for a loop by this situation, Eden seems to be in disarray as well. I'm really sorry, Lilu. Can you give me a couple days to sort things out? Sure, I'm confused too. Let's both take some time to think. Eventually, I joined the discussion once we had both calmed down. I hope they don't think it's up to me to put up with this situation alone. While that did cross my mind, Eden seemed deeply engaged in conversation with a doctor, discussing options for a scenario that would work for everyone, including his sister-in-law. He doesn't seem eager to back out. I made it clear that even short-term cohabitation is out of the question for me. Finally, Eden and his mother-in-law proposed. Could we have sister-in-law stay at the house until the end of the year? It's July now. That's a whole 5 months away. According to Eden, he did check with social services about available shelter for mothers and children, an option the doctor also suggested. However, immediate placement isn't possible. Because she has family, her case isn't considered urgent, so priority placement isn't an option either. But if the doctor says it's unsafe for her to live alone with her kids, what can we do but wait for shelter availability? Leaving her be and then being held responsible is also problematic. The shelter seems to be the best option. I worry, however, that if we allow her back, even temporarily, sister-in-law might take advantage and overstay. Truth be told, she did manage to move out last time within the deadline, but even though she was ready to move, she kept dragging her feet, not budging until the very last moment. Considering that, it might be tough to get her to leave again. Look, my sister is in a tough situation. Lilu, you've been more than generous, and for her to repay us this way, she's not my sister anymore. Next time, she'll have to leave, and the shelter should alleviate most concerns. Eden laid out conditions until she can enter the shelter. Sister-in-law will handle all cleaning and post-meal chores, help mother-in-law with her nighttime needs and bath. She will pay combined rent and food cost of $800. We won't take care of sister-in-law's kids at all. I wonder if these terms are even feasible. Will they hold up? Concerns remain, but we call sister-in-law to discuss the shelter. The doctor also thinks it's best for you to go to the shelter and aim for independence. If you're worried about living alone with your kids, it's a good option. I thoroughly explained the shelter, thinking sister-in-law would agree. Instead, she objected. No way. Apparently, she dislikes that the individual rooms in the shelter don't have baths, and she doesn't want to share washing machines. Eden was furious. You're in no position to be picky. You can't stay here, so be grateful for a good solution that lets you live decently. But I still don't like it. At this rate, she'll keep complaining and stay put. Eden says he'll make sure she goes to the shelter, but isn't he underestimating the burden this will place on me? I get that he's not doing anything, and I know there are no other options left, but I can't take it anymore. The next day, I quickly made arrangements, packed our bags, and left the house with my daughter, leaving to protect myself and my daughter. I wrote in a note as I left. Just as I stepped out, as expected, sister-in-law came back and looked already distressed. She's been calling me non-stop. Our home is a mess! I thought you'd be here, Lilu! What's the point if you're not? It would be a heartwarming scene in a romance drama to hear, "It's meaningless without you," but this is reality. You're reaping what you sowed by not becoming independent. If we divorce, it's on you. Take care of mother-in-law. I was firm. She cried loudly, but I didn't care. I've received several calls from Eden and mother-in-law, begging me to return. Please, Lilu, come back. I have zero intention of coming back, as long as sister-in-law is there. Kick her out, or I'll demand alimony during the divorce trial. We'll have to sell the house then. Even I think I'm being cold. It hurts, but it's the only way to protect what matters to me. It's a good opportunity to make them realize how much they rely on me. Since leaving the house, despite my fears, it's been meaningful to spend one-on-one time with my daughter. Eden has been contacting me daily. He told me that sister-in-law wasn't lifting a finger at home, that the caregiving was a mess, and he had to take off work to handle things. Eventually, he kicked her out. Receiving that message, a part of me is torn about whether to go back or not. Lilu and the kids are my top priority. I want us all to live together. I'm taking care of Mom myself right now, but it's affecting my job. I'm thinking about hiring a helper. However, that's not financially sustainable in the long run. You might have to work part-time. We can't put Mom in a facility immediately, and even if we do, it's going to be expensive. I agreed to live with your mom and take care of her when we got married, and I'll continue to do so. Your mom's been good to me too. But your sister will be back. She always is. She's returned home within a week before, so I want to watch the situation for at least a month. Understood. I'll hire a helper for 1 month. If Mom can move into a mother-child home soon, that would solve everything. Even though the doctor recommends it, the welfare officer won't consider it. They say it's too cruel to kick her out. I'll talk to them again. Thank you. After that, the sister-in-law comes back to our home yet again. Despite Eden's constant visits to the welfare office, the officer is only sympathetic. The situation is not improving. The stress and sleeplessness it causes me enrages Eden, who begins ignoring both his sister and her child. He confronts the welfare officer multiple times. My wife is sick because of my sister. We're even discussing divorce. If our family falls apart, it's partly your fault too. If you think she's so pitiful, why don't you adopt her? Between the stress about his sister, the uproar, the fatigue from a busy work period, and caregiving, Eden ends up in the hospital with a stomach ulcer. Although both of us collapsing secured a spot in the home, the sister-in-law starts complaining again. Seeing this, the mother-in-law spoke up. Why are you still here? You're still being allowed to stay, given the circumstances? Silent, the sister-in-law finally moves into the mother-child home. It seems she's getting by just fine now. We've hired a helper to care for the mother-in-law. Given her wishes and after considering our finances, we might move her into a facility. Peace has finally returned to our family. I'll never forget how my husband cried tears of joy when he saw me and the kids return home. I pray that my sister-in-law finds her own path and that we can continue to build such a family.